All right. Welcome everyone to the Hsdsb School Board meeting, regular meeting, April 12th, 2022. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order and ask Melissa if you can take the roll call.
Carl Hubner.
Here.
Thank you. Jay Giard.
Here.
David Smith.
Here.
Megan Malcolm.
Here.
Erin Pellegrini.
Here.
And Pinkerton Student Liaison, Jack Cameron.
Here.
Thank you. And also seated at the board table is Superintendent of Schools, Bob Thompson, and CFO Business Administrator, Jeff Dowd.
All right. Thank you, Melissa. Go ahead and ask everybody to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Megan, you want to start us off?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the
republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Thank you, everybody. Board members, in your packet, you've got minutes, two sets of them, one for the March 22nd reorg meeting and the other for the regular meeting on March 22nd. Take a minute to take a look at those, and I'll be looking for a motion to accept.
I'll go ahead and make the motion to accept both sets of minutes from the March 22nd regular meeting and the March 22nd reorganizational meeting.
All right. Any questions, comments? All right. All approve. Raise your hands. All right.
Thank you.
Unanimous. All right. Next, Melissa, are there any public comments?
There are no public comments tonight.
Thank you. All right. So first up is school highlights. We're going to ask Principal Dr. Tara Lencini to join the board.
Oh, I got it. All right. We're in good shape. Thank you for having me this evening. The first thing that I just wanted to touch base on is our incoming student registration. Kindergarten registration has started. We have 59 students already registered, many of whom are eager for full-day kindergarten. So it's really important if there is a family in the community who has not yet reached out to HCS about their incoming kindergarten student, that they do reach out to us sooner than later to guarantee a preferred placement. Preschool registration will be opening next week. We'll be hosting an evening next Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. where we'll discuss with families the sessions that we'll have in the fall. Next year, we're planning to have a 4-day morning and a 3-day morning, as well as a 4-day afternoon and a 5-day afternoon program. So more information to come on that next week at the webinar, or feel free to reach out to me ahead of time with questions. We've had some really exciting things happening in the hallways. Our 4th graders are right across the hall from our 2nd graders upstairs. And some of them have been noticing that, you know, the students needed a little bit more support and understanding what it looks like to be a Husky. And so they planned and developed and wrote some sketches to teach children about the expected behaviors in the hallways and out on the playground. And the younger students love learning from the older students. And so that's been such a nice way for the classes to come together and support each other as they work through this journey this year. Exciting news for our Universal Design for Learning team. Universal Design for Learning is an initiative that's really important to us this year. It's one of our building-based goals. And this year in April, 3 of our teachers, Sarah Wisecarver, Michelle Carberry, and Heather Burkett, all presented their work on sketchnoting. This was a conference that was offered to the state, and many folks, not only from Hsdsb, but throughout the state, attended, and the feedback has been really positive. So I thank them for their continued commitment to that effort and their representation of our district and building. The PTSA reflection contest has been completed, and we have a first place state winner from our building. Lily Cipriano placed first in the state competition for her film production piece, I Will Change the World by Helping People. And so her work will be displayed and celebrated. We're excited to be bringing back the typical traditional end of the year activities that we like to do. In May, we'll be hosting our grade 2 community show and our Memorial Day assembly. And in June, we'll be doing our multicultural, our 3rd grade concert, and our Flag Day presentations. So our students and staff are so excited to be out in front of the community again, doing what they love and what they do best. One of the traditions that we all enjoy is our wax museum with our 4th graders, and that's happening right now. I had the pleasure of meeting Mr. Hershey and P.T. Barnum this week, and the kids have put a lot of work into learning about their person and memorizing their speeches and practicing their presentations. Recently, we did complete what was called Jump Rope for Heart. This is 3rd and 4th graders. They do fundraising for the American Heart Association. And this year, our 3rd and 4th graders raised over $5,000 for the association. So thank you to the parents and community who supported your students and this worthy cause. And finally tonight, I just wanted to mention Child Find. We do have a Child Find check to screen children between the ages of 3 and 5 years old coming up in May. If you suspect that your child might have a disability, we encourage you to reach out to the Hampstead Central School to schedule your Child Find screening. Any questions?
I don't have any. Thank you. It's a good update. All right, so next we have our Pinkerton liaison, Jack Cameron, to report out to us.
Yes, so I will be reporting on activities that we've done at Pinkerton in the last couple of weeks since we've last met, and upcoming events that we should be looking forward to. So originally, I spoke a little bit about graduation, our plans last meeting, but I have some more detailed information because Pinkerton has been, over the past few weeks, releasing more to our seniors and more to the academy as a whole. Graduation for Pinkerton Academy's class of 2022 is less than 2 months away. June 1st is their last day of classes for seniors. June 2nd, they will have exams and competency recovery for their White 1 and White 2 classes. June 3rd, there will be exams and competency recovery for their Red 1 and Red 2 classes. June 6th, you have exams and competency recovery for White 3 and White 4. And June 7th, we'll have R3 and R4 respectively, competency recovery and exams. June 9th will be Senior Awards Night at the Memorial Field at 6:00 p.m. June 10th will be graduation at the Memorial Field, which is our track and football field up there at 6:00 p.m. June 11th is the rain date for graduation, again at the Memorial Field at 6:00 p.m. Pinkerton is pleased to announce that there is no restriction on the number of guests you may invite to graduation. More information about graduation will be provided in the coming weeks. This includes details regarding arrival times, expectations, dress code, seating, and parking. Please contact the Senior Associate Deans, Mr. Danable or Mrs. Larkin, if you have any questions regarding your senior's graduation. One of the events that we're having with graduation is the Senior Awards Night. For the Senior Awards Night, we have student speaker applications, which are going to be due on the 22nd of April. Faculty and administration will celebrate the class of 2022 at a senior celebration and awards night on the eve of graduation. The program will include musical performances from choral students, scholarship and awards presentations, and a featured student speaker from the class of 2022. Any member of the senior class is eligible to apply for the opportunity to speak at a senior celebration and awards night by completing an application. Seniors are emailed details with their Pinkerton Academy accounts, and a committee will review all submissions and meet with finalists to discuss their speech proposals in further detail. The deadline for this application is the 22nd of April, and Senior Celebration and Awards Night will again take place on June 9th at 6:00 p.m. in the evening on Memorial Field. Contact the Dean of Students, Mrs. Tartarilla, with any questions. The 2022 faculty play will occur tomorrow night and Thursday night, and it's at 7 p.m. in the Stockbridge Theater. The PA Faculty Arts Theater presents Shakespeare Goes to Gravel Gulch. Tickets are sold at the door for $5, and proceeds go towards scholarships for the class of 2022. Athletics. Spring sports are in full swing. There have been, I don't know, 6 or 7 games already this week, and there will be an additional 20 or so more games, meets, and other types of matches this week. If you want to have more information on those dates, times to visit, you can look at the Pinkerton Athletics Instagram account or our website for more information. One of the major changes to Pinkerton this year is we have a new proposed student dress code policy. So representatives from mostly underclassmen have been meeting with administration, management team, and members on the Board of Trustees to discuss creating a more equitable dress code. A Google form was then sent out to all students at the Academy to hear their thoughts on said dress code and this changes proposal. This proposal will then be presented before the Board of Trustees for discussion, and we're not releasing the current proposal. The students were sent kind of like guidelines for what we're thinking about to hear some of their feedback. You'll have more information on that after the Board of Trustees reviews the proposal, but one of the main changes that I think will excite many students is the fact that our current dress code does not allow for any rips, distresses in any articles of clothing on campus. This proposed dress code proposes that it is acceptable to have rips or distresses in clothing as long as they're not in the armpit to mid-thigh region. So that has to be completely covered up. There could be no distressing there, but if you have anything in your sleeves or lower legs, that is okay. More information, again, will be released after the Board of Trustees reviews this proposal. The Guardians of the Granite State is a competition, and the 2022 Guardians of the Granite State competition will occur on Friday, April 15th, so this Friday from 2:30 to 4 o'clock in the Hackler Gymnasium. There is 1 minute of push-ups, 1 minute of sit-ups, and a series of shuttle sprints. Top competitors receive $1,000, and top winners from Pinkerton compete again, both as a team and individually against students from Londonderry, Timberlane, Nashua, Sanborn, and Manchester in the coming months. If you want to find more information about this, you can visit the Pinkerton Academy Instagram page. Now, going to events that we've had in the past few weeks since we last met. Again, seniors, we had SATs, PSATs, and Senior Palooza. This was on the 24th of March. Freshmen and sophomores took the PSATs, and juniors took the SAT at Pinkerton Academy. This is the first time that we offered the PSAT to the entire classes of both freshmen and sophomores. Normally we take the SAT at Pinkerton because of state testing. While these underclassmen partook in this state testing, the seniors participated in the Senior Palooza event, which was a day that consisted of games and activities in the Hackler Fieldhouse, Manning Lecture Hall, and Stockbridge Theater. Event sponsors met with seniors to discuss future plans after high school, including college direction, employment, summer experiences, and a variety of other opportunities, and many of the major New Hampshire industries and college majors were represented. We also had the Pinkerton players who presented Pippin in the Stockbridge Theater on the 25th, 26th, and 27th of March. This show was a resounding success. And while some may have found that the plot was rather complicated, it was certainly entertaining and all students enjoyed. The JROTC had a drill meet on the 26th of March, which is the final drill meet of the season, and this was held at Pinkerton Academy. 4 of our New Hampshire Air Force JROTC units attended. Senior cadets Tyler Drew and Allie Lacasse, a Hampstead Schools graduate, took first in the combined exhibition event. Sophomore cadet and Hampstead Schools graduate Trey Baker won first for the year in the individual drill event. More information on other award recipients can be found online. The Quiz Bowl and Granite State Challenge team also had a competition on the 26th of March. They placed second in the state qualifying tournament, making them eligible for the finals in May, which I believe they're going to pursue. The Pinkerton Academy cheer. Not only was the varsity cheer team New Hampshire IAA D1 state champions and New England grand champions, they also took third place in the country at the Infinity America's Cheerleading Cup. This is on the 30th of March. The Pinkerton FBLA also did really well the past couple of weeks, and they took home many awards at the 50th Annual State Leadership Conference. Hampstead Middle School graduate Morgan Berard received a first place award in Introduction to Public Speaking. The chapter placed second in Gold Seal Chapter, Scrapbook, and Chapter Exhibit, and first in State Officer Projects. For a list of all award recipients, you can visit our homepage. The Future Farmers of America, members of the FFA, recently competed in the state competition. They brought home a team second place as well as individual awards. And again, more information can be found on our website. The 2022 New Hampshire Educational Theater Guild State Festivals occurred on the 1st of April and 2nd of April, where 7 schools joined Pinkerton to take the stage at the Stockbridge Theater for one of the 2022 New Hampshire Educational Theater Guild State Festivals. They performed Men on Boats. Astrothon. This was another event that occurred on the 2nd of April to the 3rd of April, and the Student Council hosted Astrothon 2022 on April 2nd and 3rd from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. This Astrothon event itself is referred to as a party with a purpose, and is the culmination of efforts years in the making from the Pinkerton Academy Student Council. Seniors and HMS graduates, Ellie Crump and Ryan McMahon, led this event as committee chairs of the Astrothon Committee. From 8 p.m. to 8 a.m., participants played games, decorated shirts, raised money, and tried to stay awake. One of the more interesting components of this event is obviously this night is meant to be symbolic because it's meant to be very tiring, and this is a long journey that these patients endure while they're staying at Boston Children's. And one of the ways that patients who undergo chemotherapy celebrate when they finish the final chemo treatment, they ring a bell in the lobby of Boston Children's. So when we did Astrothon, one of the traditions is that if people start to fall asleep in their chairs while they're waiting for the event, someone comes around and rings a bell, a nice loud bell in their ear, which certainly wakes them up. In total, Pinkerton Academy raised $15,287.43, far surpassing our original goal of $10,000. This money has been donated to the Every Child Fund at Boston Children's Hospital, which provides critical life-saving treatments and healthcare services for children and families. This event concluded with the presentation of Pinkerton's donation to a patient and her family, along with a Disney dance party and a cake to celebrate with them. We hope that this event becomes a tradition for Pinkerton and our students, and I have it in good faith that the Student Council Advisor, Mr. John Brito Jr., will continue to challenge young adult leaders and inspire generations more to take charge and enact change in the world with initiatives such as this. Progress reports. Progress reports were released on the 4th of April, 2022. These grades enclosed are not final and are not included on students' transcripts or report cards. Grades will be finalized at the end of the semester in June, at which time a report card will be sent and transcripts will be updated. You can view more detailed grade information by logging on to Aspen, Pinkerton Student Information System. The Spring College Fair occurred on Wednesday, April 6th from 6 to 8 p.m. in the Hackler Gym and hosted over 150 colleges, universities, trade schools, and apprenticeship programs. Students had the opportunity to meet individually with college representatives as well as school counselors to discuss all their post-graduation possibilities. And again, this college fair was not just for seniors, unlike the Senior Palooza event, so anyone from underclassmen to seniors could attend. The Astrozone premiered this past Saturday as the first ever Pinkerton Academy sports show dedicated to the athletes, students, and community. It can be watched on Dairy Cam Channel 23 or found online through the link tree on Pinkerton Academy's Instagram page. This effort was led by Benjamin Adams, a member of the class of 2022 and Hampstead Schools graduate. Hampstead Schools graduate Ty Cameron, along with Pinkerton students Logan Goki, Patrick Kogan, Brady Elias, and Gavin Grillo, have worked with Adams to bring this program to the Pinkerton community. The class of 2022 also recently announced the top 10 students. Of these students, 3 are Hampstead Schools graduates, Ryan McMahon, the valedictorian, Nathan Rue, 5, and Rachel Kiesling, 8. Top 5 will speak at graduation in varying roles, and more information on the top 10 can be found on the Pinkerton Academy website. Any questions?
Solid update. Just a little bit going on at Pinkerton. Board members, any questions? Thank you, Jack. All right. So next up, current business. We are lucky enough to have an HMS student to join us. I believe Ms. Minola will be introducing.
Good evening, everyone. Jack, you do us proud. You do us proud, and your humble beginnings were here as a hawk. And moving forward with that dedication for public speaking and oratorical talents, I would like to introduce our own Mrs. Katie Wolf to introduce a very special 8th grader.
Good evening. Jack, I'd like to say congratulations on such a great presentation. I was so impressed with the thoroughness and all the involvement of Hsdsb Middle School students at Pinkerton Academy, and that's a testament to all of our work, from elementary to the parents, to the school board who support these great endeavors of our students. I'm pleased to share one of our accomplishments of our grade 8 students in general. Actually, some of our board members had students that participated in the event that I'm about to share. All 8th grade students recently prepared a 3 to 5 minute speech on topics related to the United States Constitution. This is part of our legacy of competing in the American Legion oratorical competition. Students have developed the art of speaking in public, and this program through the Legion provides an excellent opportunity for our students to share the knowledge of our great Constitution, the importance of civic engagement with our Hsdsb Middle School community. Hsdsb Middle School has a long, rich tradition and involvement with programs offered by the Legion. Over the years, Hsdsb students have consistently performed in the top 5 placing students at the state oratorical competition at St. Anselm's. We've also had students that have gone on to the National Senior Oratorical Competition in Indianapolis representing Pinkerton Academy. And more recently, we've had students that graduated from Hsdsb Middle School that went on to participate in the girls and boys state leadership programs from Pinkerton Academy at St. Anselm's. We've also had representatives participate in the national boys state. So we have a really, as Jack knows, it's a great program for our students. Recently, we held our competition here at Hsdsb Middle School. We've had a hiatus of 2 years, and we were glad to be able to come back and have this program once again. We were pleased to have 15 students compete at the competition level, but every single student in 8th grade presented a 3 to 5 minute speech on the Constitution. At our local competition, which was judged, I think I mentioned, by Mrs. Hanson, Mrs. Mayu, and our principal, Mrs. Denola, we had 5 students that were recognized. In our local competition, the honorable mentions were Trainer Mayu, Mabel Bachman, and Dominic Fazio. Our 2 top performers, Sarah Urban and Samantha, went on to represent us at St. Anselm's. Both Sam and Sarah performed wonderfully. They made us proud, and you should be proud, and we're all proud of their accomplishments. Sarah captured second place, and Samantha finished in first place. I'm honored now to present Samantha Bell, who will be speaking on the First Amendment of the Constitution. Samantha.
Quote, restriction of free thought and free speech is the most dangerous of all subversions. It is the one un-American thing that could easily defeat us all. End quote. A quote from William O. Douglas, who is a former Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States. The Constitution's First Amendment has a lot of history, a variety of different interpretations over time, and debates also arise about student expression rights due to Amendment 1. The First Amendment has a long history, which makes it so much more interesting than some people think. The First Amendment was made to protect individual rights. It was adopted on December 15, 1791, and was the Constitution's first amendment out of 10 to the Bill of Rights. One of the main influencers to Amendment 1 was James Madison. Quote, Madison envisioned a Bill of Rights that would have prevented both the federal government and the states from violating basic liberties, end quote. For example, some events that influenced this amendment was a letter concerning toleration, where in this book by John Locke, he argued that, quote, tolerance is indeed a Christian virtue, and that the states, as a civic association, should be concerned with civic interests, not spiritual ones. Or the Virginia Declaration of Rights in 1776 that declared that, quote, all men are by nature equally free and have certain inherent rights of which they cannot deprive themselves or their posterity. Therefore, the First Amendment carries a lot of history, and that makes it so great. Along with history, the First Amendment has different interpretations. After 231 years, 1791 to 2022, many people still, surprisingly, don't know what the First Amendment means. Quote, Congress shall make no law restricting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging freedom of speech, or of the press, or of the right of the people to gather peaceably, to assemble, and to petition the government for a redress of grievance. A quote from the Constitution. The First Amendment is the amendment that protects basic expression rights. There are also many interpretations of it. It protects your right to speech, religion, press, assembly, and petition. Amendment 1 directly addressed the, quote, all-important issue of personal expressive freedoms. Since this amendment was made, we are free to attend church, mosque, synagogue, temple, or any house of worship we choose. We get to speak freely, sharing our opinions and ideas. We get to gather peaceably in places like weddings, events, parties, and more. We get to ask the government for changes. And last but not least, the press. We have the right to, quote, report news and circulate opinion without censorship from the government, end quote. Furthermore, the First Amendment is extremely essential to present-day lives. And after the First Amendment being around for so many years, you think the debates and arguments have calmed down. Wrong. Many, many debates rise, especially in school districts. Amendment 1 often causes rises in school debates. This one specifically about Mary Beth Tinker. On December 16th, 1965, Mary Beth Tinker and friends wore black armbands to Warren Harding Junior High School to protest the Vietnam War and to honor those who died in it. Tinker's protest soon got lots of attention nationally and caused mass protests all over the states. Beforehand, the school had heard of the Tinker's protest plan and actually tried to stop it. The school had threatened to suspend any students that protested and wore armbands on December 16th. Mary Beth Tinker and friends would soon be suspended. Tinker, her brother, and their friend would take this to the Supreme Court as a violation to the First Amendment's right to speech. These students managed to sue the school district, and the First Amendment, and Constitution in general, is still a big part of today. From this information, we can see the First Amendment has a lot of history, a variety of different interpretations over time, and debates also arise about student expression rights due to Amendment 1. This amendment changed the nation. It showed Americans what freedom is and what freedom can be. Although there's still may be debates and arguments about this amendment, it's a lot better than it was over 200 years ago. And now, we can thank James Madison for creating it. Thank you for listening.
That was amazing. Thank you, Samantha.
May I just thank her parents for the support and the traveling, and I'm sure they've heard this speech how many times, Samantha? Yes, but
Thank you, Joe. Thank you,
for-
Christine. That was amazing.
That was incredible. I'm so proud of you. Like I'm sorry. My son's great, so I've known her for a long time, and I just sent a message to your mother recently that I see you doing all these things, and I'm super proud of you. Great job. Thank you.
think Ms. Denola, you're up next.
I can,
You want to skip to the next?
we can skip.
Okay.
I say that very hesitant, trying to follow Sam's
I was
wonderful
gonna say,
presentation.
you don't really want to
Oh,
follow
here comes
that,
Mrs.
but
Denault.
let her follow that.
Hello. I would like to formally request permission to accept a $500 donation from the Hampstead Mothers Club. They gracefully do this from time to time as the need arises, especially at the end of the year. We've got a number of activities, field trips, and they put this as a token to go towards our Angel Fund. So I would like permission to accept it.
I mean, I'll make the motion to accept the $500 donation from the Hampstead Mothers Club per policy KCD, public gifts and donations.
I'll second it, and thank you to the Mothers Club.
I will definitely.
Thank you very much to the
Thank you.
Mothers Club.
Thank you.
And all approved, please raise your hand.
Thank you.
All right. All right, next on the agenda is to talk about the DHS school building audit.
Excellent. Yeah. So in early March, both the Hampstead Central School and the Hampstead Middle School underwent a safety audit from the Department of Safety and Homeland Security. We have now received back the written report. Just as a reminder to folks who may not be aware, every 3 years it's recommended that the school undergo a safety audit from the Department of Safety and Homeland Security. The last one was done here in Hampstead in 2016. COVID sort of put their schedule off a little bit. And so what I'd like to do is just highlight a couple of areas. The team that came to the Hampstead schools was very impressed with the progress that was made between 2016 and 2022. As many folks may remember, in 2018, the district received some grant funding from the state for safety upgrades. The Hampstead School District took full advantage of those. They increased surveillance, controlled access. Here at the middle school, they have Stop the Bleed stations. They invested money in training of staff. That includes staff being CPR trained. So there's been significant changes, improvements, and upgrades that have been made in that time. Another highlight is just the robust surveillance system that the school has, both on the exterior of the building and in the interior of the building. It was also noted during the assessment that the high-quality emergency operations plans that both schools have developed, they're very comprehensive, they're very up-to-date, they're thoughtful, and in the event of an emergency, we have a roadmap and a blueprint to keep our students and staff safe. So there are some deficits or some areas for improvement that were identified in the report. The report itself is actually a limited release report. The Department of Safety does not want us to publicly talk about items that we're going to work on. So it's my recommendation at the conclusion of the regular meeting that we go into non-public, and I can discuss some of the deficits and areas of improvement that we are already working on. That would include, and there has been some public conversation about some security deficits at the central school. We need to discuss those, and we need to come up with a plan.
Board members, any questions? A lot of questions will be done in non-public, but anything? Okay. All right. Next on the agenda then is, again, to you, Mr. Thompson, talk about the HCS edition.
Absolutely. So at the last board meeting, the board tasked the administration with working both with the project management company and also the architect to come with some alternative plans. We also heard from the board that there were some priorities. Number one priority was the main office security. We also talked about special education instructional space, classroom instructional space as well. So we've been working with the architect and the project management company on a couple of different design concepts. So we've held a couple of different meetings. We have a meeting on Friday where it's our hope to look at a specific design concept that we would bring forward to the board either at the next meeting or we would have a special meeting to discuss the project. We are looking at The deadline for submission of the application for school aid is coming up on June 30th. It will be important for that June 30th deadline that we do outline the scope of a project and have some general ballpark pricing. And I don't know if there's anything else that Mr. Dowd wants to add, or Mr. Smith. I know you've been part of those conversations as well, and Mr. Giard.
Just looking forward to seeing the new design. I think once we see that and we understand what they're coming up with, we'll have more questions and more information at that time, but looking forward to Friday.
I think, we talked about, and we're going to talk a bit more over the coming weeks about what that means once we do have a plan for the community as far as to get community feedback. Mr. Giard and I have talked about, bringing to the board when we do have that design to outline some sort of a couple of community feedback sessions. So we'd probably be bringing that recommendation to the board at the next meeting, probably be holding those in May. That way we can incorporate any type of feedback, any type of discussion to that final design, is what we were thinking. But I don't know if board members, you have any questions to Jason and I about that, what that means, but really just to get that community feedback of, show the design, get it out there, put it on the website, get it communicated out, and then invite some public sessions here at the Central School for the community to come in there, see it, and talk about it.
That's good.
So on the state aid, I just wanted to clarify. So that's been frozen for a couple of years? Is that correct?
No,
It was on hold.
there was $50 million in the 2021-2023 fiscal years, budget years, and this is a continuation. It's not a given that there'll be funds yet. It's still going through in Concord of what those funds would be, but we're anticipating, planning for that there will be. So that's what, Mr. Dowd, you want to speak anything more to that?
When you say frozen, the funds were frozen, I guess, to the extent that the appropriation was essentially level, but that was satisfying debt that was incurred many years before. So we're getting to the end of that debt cycle, and as we're getting to the end of that debt cycle, that's opening up opportunities for other districts to apply. The Department of Ed is not funding projects on a long-term basis as they were previously. They'll fund a project up front to help reduce the cost. Under their old model from 20 plus years ago, they would fund and provide debt support relief every year.
Okay.
So those debts are being paid off, those bonds are being paid off, which is opening some windows, and some additional funding is coming through for districts to take advantage of.
Do we know how often it gets approved? Like X number of schools, like 50 schools apply and 25 schools get approved, or?
It's every 2 years, and maybe 50 schools apply and 5 get approved.
Okay. Do you know, Jeff, how many got approved for the 21 to 23?
I feel like it was in that neighborhood, under half a dozen.
Okay.
But the projects were larger.
Okay.
Big projects.
Right.
So, and that, again, as we're moving further along, more money is becoming available.
Okay. Thank you.
But I think it's important, if Mr. Thompson, you wouldn't mind speaking to, that scoring system, some of the things that we're looking for, and some of the suggestions you've made about what would be in the plan.
Yeah, so essentially there's a rubric, so to speak, that goes along. It's a scoring system. And so there's several factors that go into it. There are points awarded for, socioeconomic considerations. Probably won't score very high on that. There's points awarded for historical preservation, which that's not the intention of this project. But another area is, impact on instruction, which is an area we may score well on. And the area that we would score quite well on, I believe, is under safety. So when we look at this certain, pieces of this project that we would probably score well on, the main office area, potentially the 60 stairwell is an issue. So there's a number of things that I think, and that does go into the consideration of what project we may move forward with, because we want to maximize the score. And honestly, it's a little bit of a long shot, but I think we have to do our due diligence to, try to get us any possible source of funding for the project.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Like I said, looking forward to Friday's discussion, in which we'll loop in the board after of, general direction or consideration. So, all right. So next on the list with Mrs. Tomaselli is to present the 2022-2023 school calendar for the second reading adoption.
Hello. I believe you have a copy of the calendar in your packets. So this version of the calendar you will see does not have a PD day. Instead, it continues to have the early release days. I wanted to just reiterate the times of those early releases. The buses will be leaving Pinkerton at 12:35, arriving at HMS at 1:15, give or take 5 minutes, and then arriving at HCS, give or take 5 minutes. So that will allow us about an hour and 15 minutes of professional development time several times throughout the year. And there are so many benefits to that I could go on and talk about if you're interested. But this is the version that we're presenting.
Okay.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the early release times again?
Sure. So the buses will arrive at HMS around 1:15, and then they will arrive at HCS around 2. And I would give them 5 minutes grace, in either direction. The approximate route takes about 45 minutes to get to HCS after it departs HMS. And it's actually, it's kind of helpful to us that the buses arrive in a staggered fashion because we can't fit them all to HCS all at the same time. So having them kind of arrive in waves works really well for their dismissal. We have a number of PD activities that we're looking to infuse throughout the year. And one of the kind of benefits of this model is that our para-educators will already be on site so that they can participate in the training. So having overlap between professional educators and our para-educators, as well as all of our, if there are any subs on hand that day or our nurses, having all hands on deck is incredibly helpful as we work at some of these mandatory trainings and then also district initiatives that we really want to accomplish.
All right. So, board members looking for a motion to accept calendar, and then any discussion.
I'll make the motion to accept it so that we can get to some discussion.
Okay.
I'll second it.
I guess one of my first questions would be the 75 minutes that you're saying that would free up for development. Do we really think that that's enough time to get some good quality professional development for our staff?
I absolutely do. I think we have a number of trainings that are mandated from the state that are approximately an hour or 2 hours. So it will give us a chance to either have a presenter come in and do the hour and then debrief with teams, or attend a webinar as a group and then have those kind of collaborative discussions as a team. Some of the trainings we need to do also require us to determine our own internal procedures. So, you would consume the training and then we honestly need time together to figure out what will this look like in our buildings. We have managed to get many of them in this year, but at the expense of not doing vertical meetings or other curriculum mapping that we really would like to do.
And
So-
if I could add too, to answer your question, Jay, I think it is suitable time. We'll be able to get some professional development in. Ultimately, it's not enough, but at least it's a starting point. There are some districts that will do a weekly, either late start or early release. That's a huge shift for us as a district. This is a good starting point, and I think you're going to see how effective this is for us to get some of that work done, that we would probably come back next year and look to expand that. And I think one of the trainings that's a really great example for this 75-minute or 1 hour time slot is the suicide prevention, intervention, postvention training we do. Right now, that's a 2-hour training, and it's on that March PD day. It's a really heavy topic. We could break that training up and do something right at the very beginning of the school year for an hour that's kind of manageable, and then do something a little later, kind of circle back to the training. And there's several others that Mrs. Tomaselli has identified too that are just a good 1 hour hit. The other piece too is our teachers just need time to collaborate. And if we build in an hour for them to just have some time, I think that will be very, very effective.
And then the only other question I had, last time we talked about this, we talked about before school, the kindergarten and the morning versus the afternoon sessions. How are we planning on that?
Yeah, I can answer that. So I had the opportunity to talk with Dr. Cheney, and essentially we're just we'll modify the schedule so that the AM and the PM on an early release day have equity. And if you think about it, because there's an AM session and a PM session, they'll be less impacted by the shortened day. So there will be equity in the schedule for kindergarten.
Awesome, thank you.
I don't know if you want to know any more details about some of the trainings we kind of are required to do from the state, but we have annual mandatory reporter training. That is another one that we should probably revisit throughout the year and consume in small doses, because they can be a little, it's not the most inspiring topic, but it's very, very important that our teachers are skilled mandatory reporters. As Mr. Thompson mentioned, we have suicide prevention training, and as Tracy's indicating, that it's very important for our para-educators to be schooled up and trained on these topics with the closeness of the nature of their work. We also have a number of trainings around school safety zones. Student privacy and data governance has been a topic earlier this year. We have anaphylaxis and asthma training that's biannually required of our staff. CPR training is something our teachers have expressed a lot of interest in attending. We are currently trying to squeeze that in and get everyone on some kind of rotation. It's required for us to have people that are first aid and CPR trained to attend field trips and to participate in clubs. So having a staff that is fully trained is very helpful. We also have pupil safety, sexual harassment reporting, and there's also biannual trainings for FERPA, IDEA, and Section 504. So these are some of the mandatory trainings that the state is asking us to do. We would also like to use that early release time for vertical meetings so that our teachers can have discussions, K through 8 for a content area, for example, a science vertical or an ELA vertical discussion, as well as time to kind of revisit some of the curriculum that we haven't really looked at in a few years. We desperately need to make some updates to those documents and get our websites up to date. So I think, sometimes you can get more done in smaller, more efficient chunks of time than a full day. And this is a solution that will allow our kids to still stay in school. If we were to take away a student day of learning, I just don't know that that's the best approach to get the PD time. So I think we can weave in small doses of PD while still having a student day that's still quite a chunk of time.
My only feedback, and it's something Jason and I were talking about before the board meeting, was it'd be good just to get an evaluation after this. Let this go through for a year, or when we're coming up with the school calendar for the following year.
Yeah.
Look at what this looks like, how it works, get feedback from parents, right? Because it's the first time we're going to do this many early releases. So get feedback from parents especially, and from staff and administration. How's this working? How's this, are we getting what we thought with these 1 hours, or do we got to talk about something a little bit different?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we can do that.
All right. Any more discussion? I'll approve. Oop.
Is the when's the contractual end of the day for HMS and then for HCS for the teachers?
I don't
So
know the
there
minutes.
is no start and end time in the collective bargaining agreement. Essentially, the end of the school day is the end of the contractual day, knowing that teachers stay after as long as they need
Okay.
to.
All right. Thank you.
Anything else? All right. I'll approve the 2022-2023 school calendar as in front of us. Raise your hand. All right. Unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Let's see. Next is the strategic plan draft review with Mr. Thompson.
Great. So actually, speaking of professional development time, as we move into the adoption of the strategic plan, we certainly will need lots of professional development time for this. So this is what I want to do. You have a draft of the strategic plan in your packet. It really is not my intention to present this tonight, because the goal is for the steering committee to come to a future board meeting, hopefully the next board meeting, having taken in all of your feedback, made the adjustments, and then we'll come and we'll do the full presentation. So I want to be cautious here to not present before the presentation. So what I want to do is I want to sort of walk you through the different sections, and I'd like to be able to get your feedback. You can also take time to digest this, and if there is feedback that you want to email me, it would be my intention to have the steering committee meet again, and then take in that feedback and then make some adjustments. So I'm going to just go through each section. I'm not going to read it, and I really want to start by thanking Erin Pellegrini for all of the work in what this document actually looks like. It's real sleek. I think it's a significant upgrade in terms of the presentation of the document from previous strategic plans. And having spent the last 8 months staring at strategic plan after strategic plan, I got to tell you the format, the readability of this, the graphics, it's a beautiful document. I am really excited for the committee to roll this out. So thank you, Erin, for that piece. So essentially, if we were to move through the document, we have a table of contents. And on page 4, there's a letter that Chairman Smith and myself crafted together. As we move into page 5, there is a list of the members of the committee that served on the steering committee. Also, if you look on page, so moving along to page 7, and please feel free to stop me if you have questions. I'll also take questions at the end. So on page 7, you have the district's mission statement and also the profile of the school, which you would typically see in the town's annual report. I've also outlined on page 8 a little bit of the process. Again, we've actually been working on this document. Actually, the pre-planning actually began in April this time last year, previous to my tenure, in having conversations with the Think Strategy, the company that helped us facilitate this process. So page 8 is sort of walking you through the process. Page 9 is just a little bit of an overview. Again, we administered in the fall a stakeholder survey that went out to parents, community members, staff members, and business owners. And again, we tried to capture here, some of the priorities that we heard from the community in terms of what's important to them when we craft the strategic plan. And when we met as a steering committee, we reviewed this data, and this really was the driver for a lot of the decisions that we were making. And then on page 10, annual review, action steps, and deliverables. And I really want to take a moment to focus on this page. If or when the Hampstead School Board approves the strategic plan, this is a living, breathing document. It will not sit on a shelf. It's not going to collect dust. The administrative team every year, beginning in June, will review the document. They will develop action steps for each of the priorities that are specific to each school, so the central school, the middle school, and the district office. So we'll have action steps. We'll identify the individuals that will carry out those action steps. We'll have a deadline for the completion of the action step, and then we'll have a deliverable, what that looks like. So that at the end of 3 years, when we go through these strategies and these priorities, we'll have a long list of items that we were able to achieve each of the 3 years. So this is a portion of this document that is still in development. We're currently looking at developing the action plan and criteria that each school will have to develop in the creation of their action plan. And so we also, looking at page 11, we spent a significant amount of time. Again, we had several meetings, and we spent a lot of time looking at core values. What is it that we believe? What do we hold sacred? And we came up with a number of core values. And I really want to thank Erin for creating this graphic and really helping to kind of work with some of the language here. And so when you look at the core values, and these are defined by our staff, they've been defined by our parents, by our community, with input from a variety of stakeholders. One, we always communicate with positive intent. And again, we will present this in much greater detail. I'm really just going to go through these quickly. 2, we honor the child. 3, we believe in relationship and team building. 4, we act with integrity. And 5, we promote a culture of collaboration. So if you look at pages 12 through 17, those really express with some level of detail what those core values are. I would then direct you to page 19. This is where we get into the priorities. So a priority is a broad direction that guides the allocation of resources over time. Priorities do not address everything the district will work on in the next few years, but articulate essential areas of focus above and beyond the routine business of the schools. Again, each building and the district office will look at the priorities and will develop specific actionable steps with timelines and deliverables. So to go through priority number 1, to empower students to become expert learners. Now, expert learners, that's the language of UDL, because that's a priority for our district. So you'll see woven into our strategic plan many references to the universal design for learning. So empower students to become expert learners who have the confidence to advocate for themselves and take responsibility for their learning. If we move on to page 23, you'll see that we've identified several strategies for that priority and action steps that we're going to take. And again, those will come into clearer focus and detail when the buildings submit their annual action plan. So I'm not going to read each one of those at this time. Priority number 2, examine current programs and practices for relevance and effectiveness. And again, there's a set of strategies that we would undergo to successfully achieve that on page 27. Page 29, the third priority, foster a positive school culture that honors the emotional well-being of students and staff. This one is near and dear to us because the last few years have been tough with COVID, and we really need to focus on creating a positive, or continuing to create a positive school culture. You'll see under priority 3, again, we have 3 strategies, several activities to promote those strategies. Priority 4, improve communication for staff and community stakeholders. Again, there's several strategies on page 35 that are going to help us to improve our communication. And priority 5, design learning environments to match our educational philosophies. And again, there's several strategies on page 39 that would support that priority. And then on the back, we have a sort of a glossary of terms. Recognize that there's a lot of acronyms in public education. There's a lot of edu-speak. It's mind-numbing at times, even for those of us who work in the field. So I asked Dr. Hubner, who is both a community member and an educator, to help us sort through some of the edu-speak, and he created on the last page a glossary of terms. Some that are in the strategic plan, some that are going to be in the action plan. It's a work in progress. We may add some items. We may take some away, but at least it gives, when we talk about universal design for learning, there's a little bit of a framework for people to understand that here. So I know I went through the document really quick. Again, the goal is not to present this tonight. We have a steering committee that's very excited to come and to present various aspects of it. We will go into the granular details about the specific priorities, the strategies at that time. Really, this is for the board to see, like, does the design work for you? Is there additional information that you'd like to see? I would be hesitant after working with the committee for 8 months to maybe change our core values, but is there additional information about core values? Do you want us to dig deeper into that? While we really, we have these priorities, are there action steps under those priorities that you would like to see us engage in? Are there action steps that we've identified or strategies that we've identified that you think maybe are not appropriate? So I open that up to the board. I understand I'm throwing a lot at you right now. I throw a 40-page document in front of you. So I don't expect you to have all of the answers. And again, the goal would be to get a little bit of feedback tonight that can help steer the conversation, but also any other feedback the board may have, we would readily accept that, so.
Open up to the board members.
I'll start.
You want to start?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it looks amazing. And before we, I look forward to the presentation, obviously. I know we'll get a lot more information from there. But even up to this point, there's a lot of community members, board members, administrators, teachers. Just thank you to everybody who put this together, took the time and put in the energy and effort to this. It looks, at first glance, it looks amazing. I look forward to reading it in more detail and getting more information out of it, and looking forward to the presentation. But thank you to everybody who was involved.
I didn't notice anything, Aaron.
I'd say agreed. Looking at the names, I won't read them all through, but very appreciative of those that took part in this. I think that's great. Besides the content, which we'll read and we'll give you feedback, like you said, I know for me, one thing I'd like to know eventually, if it's at the presentation, maybe at the end, some of the strategies, how we're going to get after them, what are some of the examples, and then how do we tie that back to our budget and or some of the ESSER funds or other ways we're going to pay for this in Title I, et cetera. I think that'd be good to know as well, and for the community, right? We talked about that a little while ago with some of the funds that we have available. How does that tie to this? And what are we going to do in the future to support this?
Yeah, and it was interesting because we sent this to the buildings and the principals met with their principal leadership teams to review the original strategies. And some of the feedback we received from staff, which is really good, was some of it was really granular. It was very specific, sometimes to a building, sometimes to a person's leadership style. So they asked us to kind of pull back a little bit. And so what we created with the action plan, and again, the action plan template is not in here, but it will be in the final. And I can send it to the board before we finalize it. It does exactly that, David. It outlines, here's what we're doing for HCS, here's what we're doing for HMS. This is the specific activity, timeline, person responsible. And listening to you speak, David, one piece that we can add to that is budget impact. And if it is a budget impact, what's our timeline for funding, whether through the general operating budget or through some type of grant mechanism?
Yep. So, yeah, because as an example, I know one of the items was the outdoor learning, right? And we've talked before that may need a plan and some budget. But what does that look like? What are we anticipating? I think that's just some examples. It doesn't have to be everything flushed out, in my opinion, but just have an idea so the board can understand. And when we start, straight around the corner, might as well just talk. We're going to be creating that budget pretty soon for next year. So what are those impacts to your point? So that'd be appreciated.
Yeah, and the other piece too is, we sort of landed with this being a 3-year plan because to look ahead 5 years of where we'll be, I think would be a daunting task. And I also, I like the idea of, we have a 3-year vision and, we'll go back in 3 years. We will use this just as a framework to create another 3 years. And so I'm happy that we're looking at sort of 3-year intervals. And I'm excited. The work that has been done has been absolutely tremendous. The group of people that we assembled, they come to the table with just different philosophies. We have very healthy conversations, and I think it's reflected in the draft that you see this evening.
My first thought when you say, a 3-year instead of a 5-year, I actually appreciate that because, over the last 2 years, we've talked about doing this plan. We've talked about a plan for the plan and think about the plan. And it's like we lose, something. We might lose board members that don't have that history to be a part of it, and whatnot. So I actually like that idea. I don't know other board members, your thoughts on that, but for me, I appreciate that one.
But I agree with that because I think it's going to be good for us to go back sooner rather than later and make sure things are working the way we want them.
Well, it might not be such a big feat like this time, right? This time it was like we were at 9 months, almost 10 months, right? Understandably so, with being our single district, et cetera, and a lot of newness here. So I appreciate the work that's gone into it, but it'll be nice to keep that rhythm going.
Yeah, and I would say too, I appreciate the work that was done on the previous strategic plan because if you lay these side by side, you'll see there are some similarities. We didn't just start from scratch.
Right.
We spent quite a bit of time at the beginning looking at the values, and so you'll see that the framework is similar. This document, I think, has a little bit more detail to it, and obviously with Erin's work, it's a lot prettier.
So, thank you. Any other comments for Mr. Thompson? Any discussions on strategic plan? All right. Let's go a little bit. Next is talking about the 2022-2023 board liaison assignments. So we talked a little bit about these last time, talked about commitment. There's no real set agenda as far as how to go through these. I'd ask, we go through these and we'll just go one at a time and see who wants them. Ask the questions of if there's a board member that's listed here who was on it from last year. If you're interested in, you can ask the questions, talk about what that means. But last meeting we did give a little overview of kind of time commitments and thought that goes into these assignments. So first one's facilities.
There's your name on it.
I've had it for 3 years, so I enjoy working with Jeff, but if anybody else wants to be touring the pump rooms and anything else, I certainly want to allow that to happen. I don't want to be taking this every year, but my Navy days, so I don't mind. All right, so I'll keep that one. We're going to go down, if that's all right. Next one is special needs. Megan was on it last year. So for student services, anybody interested in taking that one over?
You still want it?
I don't mind doing it, but it's up to you.
Do we want to rename that?
Yeah, I was going to recommend, I was going to say that student services.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
That's all right.
Melissa, do we have to take a vote to change that from special needs to student services, or can we just?
I think general consensus would be okay for that.
Okay, thank you.
So we're changing it to student services? Okay.
So technology?
I'll stick with it, but if anybody wants it, feel free. Sold.
We've got technology. All right, policy committee. We know we're going to need at least one person there. And oh, all right. So we got Aaron. Do we have a second person that would like to volunteer for the policy committee?
Can you remind me of the time commitment?
It's the third Tuesday of every month from 10:30 to 11:30 approximately.
I'll go for it.
Good one. All right. Now we've talked about communication committee. We had talked about consensus a little bit to make sure that we thought that that'd be a good role for the vice to have going forward. We can always change that, but for now, keep it with Jason if that's all right with everybody. All right. Turn the corner over to HMS, regular education and curriculum.
So I'd like to be the liaison for one of the schools. It doesn't matter. All right. If no one wants HCS, I'll.
I was going to say, I'd actually like to get to the central school.
Oh, okay.
All right, so you got Megan on the HMS, with Carl on HCS. All right. Next one, vouchers.
We've had a lot of fun this year, though, Aaron.
Bubbles.
No, I appreciate that what you do. I mean, it's you have a passion for it. It shows. Great job. All right. So the last one is the safety committee. So,
I'd like to do it.
you sure?
Yep.
Oh, all right. Yep, it's easy. And of course, Megan, thank you for being the NHSBA delegate. So that one went quickly. Might have caught up some time right there. Melissa, make sure you got them all. You good?
I do.
All
Thank
right.
you.
All right. So the next one is an update on the superintendent's evaluation. So just to give the public, again, just some information on our policy CVIR. We did kick that off post last meeting. We did, Melissa, thank you for doing that.
You're welcome.
And we did receive the feedback on the 360 review that Melissa had sent to the board. The board has provided their evaluation. We received that on last day on schedule, and we would be looking at the next meeting per CBIR that will be in a non-public to review and discuss said review of our superintendent, Mr. Thompson, and then we may again discuss it on the May 24th if needed, and then continue on the evaluation so that we give a formal evaluation and our review by the June 15th. That would be myself and Mr. Giard as the vice chair to sit with Mr. Thompson. So just for the public, that's our schedule over the next just about 2 months. So I don't know if anybody's got any questions, comments about that, but just say be prepared on the May 10th in the non-public. Usually that those discussions do go on for a bit, and then we already have a couple things to talk about that day, so be prepared, coffees, etc. Any comments or questions from you? Thank you. All right. Next is, make sure I've got this on my eyes here, Mr. Thompson, to provide a 2022-2023 professional staff renominations.
Okay, so tonight I'd like to present the first portion of the personnel report. I'm pleased to present the list of the 2022-2023 professional staff renominations just for your approval. Just be aware that if there's any identifying questions or you need more information, that we would need to address that in a non-public section under RSA 91-A: 3 2C under reputation.
Can I ask a question? Can you explain what the two continuing contract means?
Which specific page?
So it's highlighted in yellow.
Okay, so those are individuals who have been on an annual contract who will now move to continuing contract. So essentially we're entering into a little bit longer term of a relationship with them. So it's always good to highlight that so the board sees who those individuals are.
In the next category, just so we have the definition, non-continuing contract.
Yeah, so those are individuals who do not have what's typically called portable tenure. They're on an annual contract until such time that they've achieved continuing contract status. So that is typically gained by an individual. If you have not had continuing contract in another district, you get that at the end of your 5th year. Really at the start of your 6th year, you've achieved continuing contract. And for individuals who had continuing contract in another district and they come here, we essentially give them 2 years so that they would have to do an additional 3 and then would be nominated for continuing contract. And continuing contract essentially provides an individual with due process should the district decide that they wanted to terminate the relationship. Or a greater level of due process, I should say.
All right. Sure. And is there need for a vote for this, Melissa?
Yes, there is.
All right. So board members, I'll be looking for a motion to move forward with the 2022-2023 professional staff renomination as presented by Mr. Thompson.
So moved.
Any more discussion, questions?
That you can say in public.
All right, all approved, please raise your hand. All right,
Thank you.
thank you. All right, so we're gonna move on now to policy second reading. Let's see, two policies for adoption. First policy, JCA, change of school or assignment based on best interest and manifest hardship. And JEC, manifest educational hardship. So board members want to take a look at those and ask any questions of those of policy committee. Again, this is for the second reading. At prior board meeting, Mr. Thompson did walk through some of the changes on this. Okay, looking for a motion to accept policies JCA and JEC.
So moved.
Second. I'll second that. Any discussion, questions, comments? All right, and all approved, please raise your hand.
Thank you.
Unanimous. All right, board comments and correspondence. Let's start with Carl. All right, Jason.
Since the last meeting, like we discussed earlier, we participated in a couple different meetings with our architects and our design team for the Central School Edition. Looking forward to seeing what they have to propose to us and getting that out to the public. Last night I attended the select board meeting. Some good conversation taking place over there. It looks like some of that information is going to be discussed here shortly, so I won't ruin the surprise. But something I think that's going to benefit the entire town, benefit the school district, something that I'm excited about. So I can't wait to hear more from that. And I think that's all I had.
Yep. For myself, same. Construction committee, I'll say that what I appreciated in those discussions we've had was it wasn't just, hey, here's what the board's looking for. There was definitely a lot of good discussion and feedback from those that we're working with, from Gino and team, the architects, et cetera, of just dialogue and trying to understand what we're really looking for to incorporate that. So I'm looking forward to this Friday's discussion. We also had a discussion with Trident, just talking about the board's direction with wanting dual quotes and what that process looks like. We believe that we will be inviting Gino and team to a future board meeting to talk about that and that process of what that looks like and kind of set up, post design approval, what will that look like in the future, and give really good dialogue and allow again for public community members discussion. So we look forward to having those discussions in the future. Also have attended a few garden committee meetings with Megan and the administration talking about what's going to be done at the garden to bring the kids there and the curriculum, which is fascinating and amazing to see what that's bringing to the students. So we appreciate a lot of great work from Nicole and staff and Dr. Cheney and everybody to bring that to light. And that's what I've got for comments and correspondence for now.
So as David mentioned, attended the garden meeting. I think we're going to hear more about it in a little bit, so I won't go into it. I just, again, want to extend my appreciation. For a while I was saying to myself, this could have been started 2 years ago. And I now am starting to see why it didn't. I think we just needed the right district leadership in place for it to be as impactful as it is. Seeing Nicole and Mr. Thompson, their faces are so bright when they talk about it, and it just makes everyone excited. So I just want to, again, thank you.
I remember Amanda was the first person that asked the question, and I was so impressed by her questions and her being a family friend. I immediately texted her mother and father, said you should be proud of your daughter, what she just asked, and send them links to the video after. And it was really great. And just the line of students that were asking questions. We didn't get, I think we got to less students than were originally in line. You know, I think we probably got to, what, 15, 20 students. There are probably 40 students in line to ask questions. In,
Really impressive. Their questions were thoughtful, and they really put effort into what they wanted to say, and it was just wonderful. Really proud of all the kids and staff.
I think just, just one more thing. I just want to kind of feedback on what Megan was saying about it too. With the administration and everyone in place, some of these things that are coming in for the students that, I think at some point we were missing. And now we have these, looking forward to future engagements for the students and look forward to, I don't know how they're going to do it, but I'm sure that's going to even level up even more with the next presentation and the next opportunities for the children. We talked about, is it the 8th grade field trips, all these things to bring back and bring in, do even more of, just to bring, things about our Constitution, bring about history, all of that. It'd be really great. So thank you. Sorry, thanks.
Sounds good.
All right, that's good for board comments, correspondence. We're going to go to consent agenda.
All right, so the second part of the personnel report, we have 3 resignations I'd like to read. The first is the resignation of Caitlin Coleman, who currently serves as the Hsdsb CBA. That's a half-time position. That would be for effective 6/30/2022. And BCBA, again, lots of acronyms in education, is a board certified behavior analyst. Jennifer Foisey, she's HCS elementary classroom teacher. That would be effective 6/30/2022. And finally, Saban Thompson, HMS math teacher, effective 6/30/2022.
I'll make a motion to accept with regret the resignations of the 3 staff members, and thank them for their time with us and everything that they've done.
Or a second. All right. Yeah, just echo that. Thank you to Caitlin Coleman, Jennifer Foisey, and Saban Thompson for all the great work and working with our students here. Really appreciate everything you've done.
Same.
All right, all approved, please raise your hand. All right,
Thank you.
All right, just moving on to the superintendent's report. This is a time of the year to really pay attention to what's going on in Concord. This past week, bills that have been passed in the House have moved on to the Senate, and bills in the Senate have moved on to the House. It was a very busy year in the world of education. There were over 200 LSRs relative to education. It's been narrowed down, but there's a number of important bills that are out there. And I thought, Mr. Dowd, who follows these things very carefully, I've just asked him to give just a little bit of update on 2 that I think need to be on the board's radar and the community's radar.
So two bills that have come up, they've gone from the House to the Senate. One is House Bill 1070, which seeks to make adjustments to the default budget law. And in the default budget, right now we don't get any increases, except they're by contract, required by law. There are a number of factors, but typically we don't get any increases in the default budget. This bill seeks to take any reductions in the operating budget and carry them over to the default budget. We typically don't. If we reduce the operating budget, we have one line that's 10,000. We reduce it to 7,500. We typically don't carry that over to the default budget. You get what you got last year, essentially, the general proposition, and you figure it out the new year if you're in a default budget cycle. We use those that difference. We use areas where we've been able to reduce in the operating budget to cover any increases that we weren't able to put into the default budget. So removing or requiring us to remove money from the default budget we've removed from the operating budget gets a little tricky, because that money has typically been appropriated by the voters in the previous year and is used to offset any of those increases which we're not allowed to include. One of the primary concerns with the bill, however, for a district like ours, is that we have, and we've gone through a program where we've introduced Chromebooks into our schools. So those were new. Those new Chromebooks go under, let's say, account 1100.733. Those become replacement at some point because now we're replacing them. We've fully furnished the schools. That now becomes account 1100.734. So from a current perspective, in the operating budget, I would make that change, and in the default budget, it would stay in the 1100.733 account. Even though it's new equipment, we've done an accounting change. Under the new default law, there's a question as to, well, that's a reduction in one line in the operating budget, right? 1100.733 would be reduced, and line 1100.734 would be increased. From a technical perspective, that increase may not be allowed in the default budget. So it's little things like this that are important for the public to keep in mind that are some of the unintended consequences of these bills. The other bill is I believe it's House Bill 1393, which is the school district budget cap, which I don't know if you've heard too much about. It seeks to take essentially a figure by ballot and limit it or cap it by changes in the average daily membership, or ADM, and multiplied by a factor of inflation. So a couple of the problems with that bill are that as of right now, we, Hampstead, have ADM for our middle school and for our elementary school. We don't have an ADM number for our high school because they get picked up in Timberlane. And ADM is two different numbers. It's ADM-A, which is ADM in attendance. So we don't have anyone in attendance in our district. That's a big zero. We have an ADM-R, which is ADM in residence, which may be more students in our town than actually go to Pinkerton. So for districts like us, the calculation falls flat a little bit. We have some questions on how that would be implemented. In addition to that, another section reads that for warrant articles proposing bonds, notes, or other multi-year expenditures, only the first year of estimated costs shall be used in counting appropriations for the budget cap. So if you recall, our first year on the bond this year would have been $314,000. Our every other year after that is $1,439,000. So if you have a budget cap that's put in place and it's looking to allow only the first year of those bond costs, you're only allowed to have $314,000 in the budget. Subsequent years, it's almost like you have to pull $1.1 million out of the budget in order to make room for those bond payments. It's a very strange setup when you actually get into grinding the numbers, putting them together, and seeing what the impacts are. So just putting it out there for the board. Could be two impactful bills on the finance end. So any questions on them?
No. We've had multiple discussions on this, and we're going to be having some more later on this week. So appreciate the update. But
on the budget cap, is there anything now that prevents towns from putting a budget cap on the schools as it is?
It's more on the municipal side. So Manchester, for example, I believe they do have a budget cap, but that's more on the municipal end of things.
The total spent between the school and the municipal?
Potentially, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And one of the other issues is that we talk about a budget cap, but it's not a tax cap. And so, for example, we receive money funding in for ESSER, and if we know that we're going to be spending that money, as I did this year in the budget, increase the budget, increase the appropriations, to show that we were expecting to spend $300,000 more in grant money. No tax impact because that's coming from the federal government. But under this budget cap, we would have to, right? We would be capped at what we'd be able to spend. So if I wanted to accept $300,000 more, we'd have to cut $300,000 of budget in order to accept that. And again, increasing the budget by $300,000 has no tax impact because the revenue's met by federal funds on the other end. So it's a little interesting when you dig into it. So
in a way, it's basically limiting your ability to have flexibility in your spending. So, yeah, I've seen this, and there's some towns up north that have a total budget cap for the entire town. And what happens is you end up, the municipal spending and the school spending end up fighting over things constantly as opposed to being able to work together because it limits their ability to be creative on these things. So,
Yeah, this is enabling legislation, so it's not something that would be superimposed over any district unless the district voted to adopt it anyway.
Yeah, I was gonna say, there's a lot more to this as far as the town actually adopted this. It just have to be forced on us.
Exactly.
Yep. But it's good to be very cognizant of this one, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other discussions around this? No?
All right, I invite Mrs. Tomaselli to talk about our garden project.
My computer battery is starting to die, so I'm going to try to project before it does. We have some adorable pictures. That's going to take a second to warm up. So one of the other things I just wanted, while this is loading, I just wanted to apologize because I know the viewers at home, the view is a little dark tonight because we're trying new lighting combinations. So with the dark tablecloth and the lights off so that we don't wash out the projector, it does appear to be a little bit dark at home. So we're kind of playing with the audio and the lighting of all this new tech equipment. I did want to say along those lines, having this tech equipment in place has been amazing. The presentation you were talking about earlier with Katya Preston, we live streamed it that day and recorded it. It's been viewed over 515 times on our YouTube channel. So the ability for families to go back and rewatch that, for parents and grandparents, other community members to be able to access that footage, I'm so grateful the timing of these events worked the way it did. Okay.
Thank you for all that coordination you did at the end of last year and into this year. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I think it's going to be tremendous utilizing this technology moving forward with school events as well. We don't have control, by the way, of the output on the cable channel. So if you're watching this from home, it's not in high def. It's still in standard definition because the components at the local level are still standard def, but our components here are high def. So when they upgrade, it'll be high def on their end as well. But our YouTube stream is high def. So these are, I just wanted to thank all of the parents who donated equipment and had materials shipped to school. We had hundreds of, and we still have many, many of these 6-pack trays that were donated and many classroom trays that have no holes in them that are going to allow us to water our little seedlings from the bottom, and through vacation week they'll stay watered. We've gotten seed donations. These little tiny containers here you can see were from the Hsdsb Gardening Club, as well as a number of different seed packets. Those are from the Free Seeds for Schools, as well as parent donations. We've got soil that we received from Home Depot. We have more seeds. These are the little kits that we were able to assemble and give to classroom teachers. So this is your all-in-one little seed starter tray, your seeds, and you'll see Ziploc bags, and that's on purpose so that they could insulate the 6-packs to kind of get them going and to keep some of the mess down. We don't, if we can germinate the seeds without getting soil all over the heating units, that would keep Mr. Mackey happy. So here we go with kids planting right away. We put the seed little kits out on a Friday, and within days the kids were planting. So I'm very happy our teachers dove right into this. We have little labels and Everybody's kind of found spaces. This is a second grade classroom. I can't believe they're already grown this much, but they have some routines going. We have teachers exploring with different documentation. Students are making observations. We're getting our little watering routines going. So this is just, it's all very wonderful. I'm thrilled. And there's not a lot of, academic pressure at this point, but everyone that's doing this has signed up and wanted to do this. This is a whole tray of cabbage that sprouted overnight in Mr. Remelard's room. And he has like ideal growing conditions, but this tray was not under lights. This was just in the room because his lights are already occupied with, you can see in the back, the hydroponics kits are already utilizing most of the UV lights. So he has like a green thumb, of course, but we're gonna have a lot of cabbage, I think, to donate to the community garden. And the kids are working together, and this is like a wonderful picture because, like Megan was saying, 2 years ago, I'm sure you wanted to do all this, but 2 years ago, we were not in a place to be able to do this. We would not have had kids working in small groups. They would have had to stay in desks 6 feet apart. Like, there were so many other things going on 2 years ago that this wouldn't be possible. So this is wonderful that we're finally here. And here's another little example of some writing, and the kids will chart the day of growth, so they can kind of table and graph the germination rates. So those are just a few little pictures, and there's a worm. Let me show you this one. This is the Worm Hotel with no vacancy. So we have a student that's very interested in worms. We're going to utilize him as well as probably his family, and Isabel Povey. I'm going to be reaching out to her. She's already shared with us a little webinar that's pre-recorded on her Seeds of Hope program that was made available to all the advisories at the middle school. But I think we'd like to get her back on site, possibly when our central school students are working with UNH to do some soil testing. We're going to try to make like a culminating event, and that will be the first week in May, I believe it was. So things are starting to really come together. The teachers are excited. I can't thank the community enough. They're very responsive and donated a ton of equipment. So now we just need to start rolling out some curriculum activities and some inquiry-based learning, and I think we're well underway.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, do you have any questions?
Can I just make one more comment?
Sure.
So just looking at those pictures, I was thinking, your child doesn't come home and say, "Oh, Mom, I completed a math worksheet." They come home and they tell you they played in the dirt and they were working with their classmates, planting seeds. So I think the experience it has impact that just.
Yeah. And it will be more so once they're in the garden. Once they're in the garden, and we had a meeting today, and there's so many directions and ideas. I'm just excited that we can kind of actualize our small role in this bigger community initiative. But once our kids start taking their seedlings across over to the community garden and really seeing the big picture, I think you'll have even more stories coming home. That's the goal. And then addressing some of if we can create systems to teach children, particularly our older children, about their role in helping to stabilize food insecurity for others, I mean, that would be like an amazing outcome. It's a little bit far away from today, but that's definitely in our radar. And we have all the right players here. We have a very dedicated staff, and you just give them a little suggested hint and they run with it. So I think there's plenty of room here for anyone that wants to be involved, and I'm excited about it. It's fun.
If I can just add one thing,
Sure.
I'd probably be here as a community member right now to talk a little bit, or asked to be talking a little bit, because there's a lot of work that's been done over the last few weeks to get it ready for the kids to be there, between doing the raised beds over there and building the boxes, and there's some work activities coming up this weekend to get those rows ready for the kids so they can start planting in May. And we talk a lot about thanking the staff, the administration who are part of this, but there's also a lot of community members that have been a part of this. Some are pretty unsung, and they're the silent heroes out there. I want to call it to one specifically that's been doing a lot behind the scenes. He's probably gonna say something to me after I put his name out there, but there's a community member, John Clark, who has donated a lot of his time with his tractor and his thoughts, and Him and his wife have both, put a lot of time into what that design will look like. And this weekend, we'll be out there creating the first outdoor learning center with logs from logs, they're really branches from this big tree that fell down. But we're going to be creating a learning center out there for them to sit, and that'll be there for the students, and we'll make that large enough for having classroom sizes, not just one classroom, but grade level. So just an unsung hero there, but there's a lot of other dozens and dozens of community members that have donated a lot of time and that are going to continue to do that in the coming months and years. So just another shout out there, but thank you.
Absolutely. I think it's awesome. And I'm so, it's amazing to just be a small piece of this. Like, there's so much that's gone on in the past month with the raised beds being assembled, with all of that black fabric being ripped up with the weeds in it. And just, I know it's a lot of labor, and it's awesome to see it happening. So it's great. Thank you.
Thank you for talking to me.
Yeah, and it's a good plug for the strategic plan. Priority 5, design learning environments to match our educational philosophies. That's exactly what this is. This is going to be a tremendous project. And then, we were talking today during our gardening meeting, like, this is this year's project. We're going to get this up and running. This is going to be a system that's in place. We'll have dedicated people working on this. Next year's going to be a different project, right? Continuous improvement. And I think, the strategic plan that helps to sort of guide and frame this work. So, thank you. So I just wanted to highlight this evening, we held a presentation for parents and community called the Hempstead School District Federal Grants Allocations FY21-22. This is just important because as folks are aware, the Hempstead School District receives money from the federal government in the form of what we call title grants, which fund things like professional development, technology, money for struggling students. There's also a grant called IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Educational Act, specifically for students in special education. And IDEA Preschool helps fund our preschool program. So those total funds bring the district $349,879 worth of revenue. And we also have the ESSER funds that we received from the federal government, and that is the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund. And the for FY21-22, that's $424,426. So it's really important that the community is aware of the amount of funds we receive, what we are allowed to use those funds for, what we use those funds for. And then a question that's actually come up quite a bit is, because this is money that comes from the federal government, what are our requirements or obligations to the federal government in receiving these funds? So the presentation that was given tonight, we will put it on the website, and we'll allow folks to see all of this information. But also, an important slide, there's a link on the first slide that is assurances and GEPA. So if you're very curious about what does the Hempstead School District have to do in order to receive these funds, click on the link for assurances, and it will walk you through a document that will outline our requirements. Also, just real quick, second. So yesterday, Nicole and I had the opportunity to attend a job fair at Riviera University, doing our absolute best to try to recruit the next generation of educators. It's a commitment of ours that includes our HR department, Melissa Post, and Jeff Dowd. We got to get very creative with how we recruit our next generation of teachers. The candidate pools, they're shrinking. And the old model would be, we'll post, to our website, we'll post to the teacher, ed job site, we'll wait for people to come to us. They're not coming to us. And it's not just a trend in Hempstead, it's a trend across the board. So we're looking to be as creative as possible and getting out there. Today, we are calling some of the folks that we met yesterday that we think, we'd like for them to apply. So again, we'll continue to have conversations, but we have to get creative about recruitment. And that can be difficult for a very small district. Some of your larger districts have dedicated resources and departments to recruitment. We don't. We have a small office, so we have to get creative about how we are recruiting teachers. And then lastly, no, actually two more things. So last week I had the opportunity to travel to Concord. The state held their Universal Design for Learning Spring Conference. The Hempstead School District was featured at that conference. We had staff members who presented on a strategy for note-taking. I got to watch the workshop. It was well attended by educators from throughout the state. And the three staff members who presented were Sarah Wise-Carver, we had Heather Burkett, and we had Mrs. Michelle Carberry. Yes, okay, great. They just did a fantastic job. They represented us well. Again, when people think about Universal Design for Learning, which is a research-based methodology, they look at the Hempstead schools. And then finally, on Thursday, we have members of the Hempstead School District staff who will go to Concord for the Innovations in Education Conference. This is like, I'd like to maybe call it like the All-Star Game, or maybe the Super Bowl. And I might be exaggerating a little bit, but the point is when there's innovation in the state, it typically gets highlighted at this annual conference. And the work that has been done with the Connection Coaching Program, both for providing continuity of instruction for kids during quarantine, but also now it has evolved into providing remediation and support for students that might be struggling or who have fallen behind. So that will be featured on Thursday. I'm very excited to go up to Concord and support our Hempstead colleagues in that. Other than that, I have nothing else, and if there's any questions the board had, I'd be happy to answer.
It's great what you're highlighting some of the innovative practices we're doing here and how it's, being put on display in other places. So let's this is from we're really looking to trail on some of these areas and looking forward to more, like you said, with the administration and staff in place. So thank you. All right, we've got a few things under other business and old business. Some that I'll start with the first one with Mr. Bob Weimer, who is the chair of the planning board. He contacted me as the board chair and just asked some questions about does the school want to be involved in the master plan, and we talked individually, and yeah, it made sense, and we wanted to invite Mr. Weimer here and Kim to talk about what it is that's happening, how we'll be involved, and how do we get the community involvement. So, Mr. Weimer, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having us. I certainly appreciate all the hard work you folks do, and your discussion of the strategic plan certainly leads into the master plan process we're doing. So this is gratifying that we're sort of simpatio or whatever. We're in sync. I think it's important to know that this is a state process. It's required under the RSAs that we have a master plan. The last one the town did was in 2010. We started in 2021 to create a new master plan. And the purpose of the master plan ultimately is to act as a guiding document for the town's growth and development. Historically, that has been focused primarily on municipal functions. And I think at this point we'd like to see a little bit more involvement by the school, primarily because, frankly, when we did our survey in 2021, we did a survey of all the residents. We had 800 respondents, and it was interesting that of the comments that were made, most of them related in some form or fashion to the school. And so the folks believe that the whole concept of a master plan, I'm sorry, I might not, I figured my bass voice was good enough. The comments that came in were all intended to create an interest in supporting the schools and supporting not only the infrastructure, but also the programs and the new SAU philosophies. So I think based upon the town's feeling, the town residents' feelings, that we really need to make sure that there is a relationship between what we're doing in this master plan and what the school department is doing. And I think that it will, in fact, assist us in providing a more, if you want to use the term, collaborative feeling amongst the town departments, which is really what our goal is. So the next phase of this, and I believe you have a copy of the vision statement as it stands. The vision statement at this point now is a draft that is subject to, first, the review by the departments and committees in town that have, in large measure, contributed to the development of the document to date. In addition, we're looking for others, and the school board it would be one of them, to come in and provide your comments, given that there are many elements within our master plan that overlap things that the school board would be responsible for. So I think that the next steps are, first, a committee meeting, if you want a committee and boards meeting, that we're having on the 21st of this month. The purpose of that meeting is to get comments embedded into the current draft of the vision statement, which we would then take to public hearings. And we certainly invite the school administration to participate in those public hearings. The intention of those hearings is not to stand and pontificate, but rather to have the townspeople come in and give us their insights as to what they see as most important, what they view as issues that need to be addressed. Kim, I don't know if you have any other thoughts.
Thank you, Kim Colbert. I will reiterate a lot of what Bob had said. We really do need full oops, sorry, Bob's taller than I am, and a lot more deeper. We do need the total town to commit to this master plan in order for us to follow it. Just as you were talking earlier about your strategic planning, this is a document that really needs to be adopted by the whole town. That means all of our committees. And that is why the importance of having the input from the school, from the selectmen, from all of our other committees would be very helpful for us to get a document that we all look at, we all agree upon, so that way when it comes down to look at certain situations and when we have to follow certain RSAs, we need to make sure that they fit into our, although the RSAs are state, but we want to make sure that our town follows into this master plan. So again, it's all about bringing the town together. So I would appreciate anybody that was able to come and help, come and talk to us, give us your input, if you could come on one of the days, maybe there would be a liaison that would come and help us, but appreciate it and thank you for all your work.
I think it's really important to know how committed the group that's doing the master plan is. And we've been fortunate to have the support of the Rockingham Planning Commission, which the selectmen graciously let us hire to help us with this process. And suffice it to say that we really mean it this time. So I think the important feedback, let me just give you some of the questions that we think are critical. Are our goals and visions clear? Can you see the work of your board falling under a particular goal? And there are several goals in which I think the school board and the administration would fit into. And there may be others that you'd like to add that would make it even more inclusive. In addition, are the objectives clear? Are there specific objectives that you think don't complement the work that we're doing or the work that you would need to do? And are there actions that we should remove or actions we should add? I think it's really important that we would like to have the school board and the school administration feel free to take the lead on some aspects of the plan. I think having that integration of the organizations in town will make the document, but also the implementation more powerful. And that's really ultimately what I think our committee wants is to do something that is lasting and will provide some real benefit to the town. So if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to ask them.
One real quick, just to
Yeah.
verify. On the email that you had sent to Dave, it said that the meeting was going to be on April 24th.
Yes.
You mentioned April 21st.
I'm sorry, I meant the 24th. No, 21st. I'm sorry, the 24th is wrong. It's the 14th and the 21st, Thursday nights.
Okay.
But then we're having open public meetings on May 5th and May 7th.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry for that confusion.
No, just wanted to make sure I had the right dates so I could put it in my calendar. I definitely anticipate that I'll be attending on the 21st. Obviously, anybody else who wants to attend, feel free to join me. But for any board members who can't attend, please, if you have any questions or concerns or opinions or thoughts, please forward them to me
Right.
so that I can bring them to the meeting on the 21st.
Right, thank you. And we certainly welcome your participation in those public meetings as well, because I think it would be beneficial for you to hear, hopefully, what the public have to say to us about it as well.
I unfortunately can't make the 14th, but I'll be there for the 21st.
Okay.
Are you looking for participation on the 14th, Bob?
If you have someone that would like to attend the meeting to get their feet wet, so to speak, it's going to be an internal discussion of the committee to finalize what we intend to take before the boards and committees. We have received input from a number of the town departments, and that will be incorporated into the document we release tomorrow, I believe. Tomorrow. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate your
No, it's gonna
attention.
be really good. Thank you,
Thanks.
Mr. Weimer.
Yep.
All right, so like I said, we got a few things under other business, old business. The next one I'll introduce, but definitely we have our stellar select board member, Steve Morse, joining us tonight. So I'd like to introduce kind of the history of this. About a month or so ago, in a local paper, there was a communication of this net zero task committee that in Derry that was formed 6 years ago. And throughout the life of this net zero task force in Derry, they looked at how to reduce the town cost of energy, be it gas, oil, electricity, et cetera. They looked at a lot of different things. And in the paper, it was really interesting to see that they did a lot of small wins, and then they slowly got up into how to essentially, they're building a solar farm out in their on their I forget what it is exactly. Their old dump is and so we reached out, myself and Mr. Morse. We're interested just to hear what they were doing and how they may apply or may not apply here. Just to learn. We went to a meeting about 3 weeks ago in Londonderry, where they were providing the Londonderry Energy Committee kind of a brief of what they've done, so that the Londonderry Energy Committee could say, okay, that's great what you've done. Let's see what we can learn from it and apply, and how can we build up this energy committee and bring value to their town. And from that, Mr. Morris had a really great thought of, well, how do we bring that here to Houston? And last night he brought it to the select board, and I'd like to introduce Mr. Morris to come up here and speak to what happened.
Bring this down for the short people. Thank you for that introduction. It's much better than what I did last night at our meeting. But ultimately, yes, as David said, we thought it was a great idea. I really wanted to jump right on it, especially where we have a lot of other things, as with the planning board just mentioned, that maybe this could somehow incorporate down the road when we start talking about capital improvements and whatnot. So I did bring up last night to form a energy committee for the town of Hampstead, with the intention of, including the school board. Obviously, you have, 2 facilities in town that we could greatly benefit from having essentially the goal of a net zero cost for energy. And again, I think that we, as on the town side, back in 2008, we did, kind of an audit, which, was typical LED improvements and kind of the the things that Eversource said, yeah, this would work, and street lighting and that stuff. But I want to expand it significantly to see, revisit those items and then move forward with whatever else may come down the road. I mean, we're not Londonderry, we're not Derry. I don't foresee us having some, town-wide solar farm. But, they were very fortunate that they had a lot of land that they could use to do that. But I do think that there is some options for us moving forward. And I did want to come here tonight to essentially just let you guys know that we did approve that last night. And my intention is to obviously include, at least a school board member and, whatever else you guys may see fit as representation on that committee once we get it off the ground. So.
Yeah, and Mr. Thompson and I talked about a little bit tonight, board members, and just thought that it might make sense for, of course, Mr. Jar's the liaison, but also Mr. Mackey being the facilities director, who would be able to access a lot of the information you'd be looking for and be part of whatever, collectively the team thinks that are some of the small wins we could do, LED lights, et cetera, whatever that plan is.
Mm-hmm.
So board members is, it's more of just FYI on this, and, looking at Mr. Thompson to really add who he thinks, but talk about Mr. Mackey being that person and seeing where this goes. They haven't, don't know the schedule of meetings, don't know what they're going to be looking into, but they're going to create a plan and present it out to both boards and go from there. So.
Sure. Yeah. Well, even on the town side alone, you add up all what we budget for each year. I mean, we're talking 40,000+ in just electricity. So, even if we could find some way to alleviate that, with everything, as we all know, is just constantly going up, and so it made sense. And again, it's not. I don't see it as being as big of a lift for our town,
right,
as what they had to do and everyone they had to incorporate, because their electricity bills are even larger. And I think part of it too was there was some legislation that came down that allowed them. They kind of hit a roadblock with only being able to, and this is just kind of for your information, but they were only able to produce like 1 megawatt of electricity total for years, or whenever they figured out what they were going to actually need. So there actually was some legislation that now allows municipalities to go up to 5 megawatts of creating your own solar power on that end of things. So, again, moving forward, there's a lot to it, but I definitely wanted to get right here tonight to put that out to you folks. So.
I think that's important that what you mentioned. We talked about it in last night's board meeting. You talked about that if you look at the members that Derry had, right?
Mm-hmm.
They've got a long list of that's not what to create. It's not. So I think that's really good what you talked to last night. A few select members that made sense. So look forward to what the committee comes up with.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So three more things here for other business, everybody. One is Mr. Thompson and I were involved in a discussion with a community member about agenda packets. And this is what I want to bring up to the board. I don't think this is a policy, but I want to have discussion about this, which is when we get our agenda packets, what's posted to the town is literally this piece of paper that says here, it's on the agenda. And then we get the agenda packet with all the backups. But the community members don't see that. And a community member had brought this up as something that would we entertain changing that, so that when we get this agenda packet, would we be interested in sending out the backup also to the public so they can see what we're seeing, as everything's more virtual now. So if somebody's online on YouTube, somebody's watching at home, they can see this information that we're looking at. And I want to bring this up and look to Mr. Thompson for his input to this, but also get feedback from the board members, what their thought were around this. So, Mr. Thompson?
Yeah, I know it's been the practice that just the agenda typically goes out. Other districts will include the supplemental material So I think it's just a matter of what information you're looking to put out. We just have to be a little bit more, I'd want to talk with my team, I think, because, there may be times where there's information in there that we want the board to see first, and that maybe isn't suitable for the public until we actually get to the meeting. But that wouldn't necessarily exclude us from publishing that information afterwards. So I do think it's worth a conversation.
Board members?
It's something I've actually thought of over the last several months where, we have the handouts from Jeff or whoever. It's like, oh, the people on this, people at home can't see what I'm seeing unless they're projecting. So I'm fine with it.
I wonder, and again, welcome the conversation, if we could maybe take back this feedback, and I can just talk to my team, and we might be able to finalize that for maybe the next meeting.
Okay.
So I welcome comments.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see what that looked like. I mean, because I know, like you said, there might be some things that you don't want to put in there yet because you want us to see first, or however that works. So I guess I'd be interested to see how you guys feel that could happen, or best way to approach that.
Yeah, so we know like the non-public stuff can't be, published, but there's definitely information here that, we look at, and, this has just been, to your point, it's been a long-standing practice, however long before my time, any of the board members' time. So I think from my standpoint, I'd like to take up the recommendation. You look at it, talk with your team, and then come back to us at the next step.
Yep, absolutely. We could create a checklist of these are the items that we'd recommend that would be included. Principal reports, Pinkerton report. These are some items, personnel report that we would maybe keep out until after the meeting. So I'd be happy to meet with my team and come back with a recommendation on our part.
I believe from board members.
And we do publish the official agenda packet, it's just after the meeting, correct? Yeah. And so, and we'll have further discussion on it, but as is the case with this meeting, we had a couple of things that would be in the agenda packet that actually weren't on the agenda. Right? So we don't always follow it, but like the dairy net zero task force update, sort of a last minute thing, we can get it in, it'll be part of the official agenda packet. So, but we do publish that, but it is after the fact because it includes the complete comprehensive package at that point. But we'll have the discussion.
Yeah.
I think we understand the intent of the board, and it's reasonable.
Yeah.
Right. And we understand it is published after, it's just about being published before. So again, if we want, we talked about having community members more involved, right? This is one way to get community members more involved, because if they're reading it, they can ask us questions, send us emails saying, hey, I see this is on there, I saw this attachment. And at the end of the day, it's public knowledge anyways. So why not send it out before? But thank you. The next one is on the right to know policy. So another discussion that Mr. Thompson and I had with a community member about looking at how we do charge for assessments per copy. And the question was, which was raised to us, was would the board be interested in looking at that policy to revise it, to maybe set it to something different, meaning either waive the fee and or just changing what that limit is, et cetera. And I know that there is a policy in place, so looking for the board to just discuss what their thoughts on the right to know requests.
Is it an actual policy?
Yes.
So obviously, I'd recommend that we send it to the policy committee for their review. I don't see any reason realistically why we couldn't waive that fee. I would worry a little bit about someone maybe abusing it. And that does put a tax on our staff at the SAU in printing those out, organizing and compiling them, and then getting them ready for whoever's requesting it. Potentially, maybe there's a cap at a certain level to prevent that from happening. But I don't know where we would set that cap at.
Right.
It'd be interesting to see maybe what other districts in the area do as well.
Right.
See if they have a similar policy or a cap or a per sheet type of policy for that as well.
Yeah.
To limit to do it by page count, right? So if you're getting a document that's 2 pages, I mean, we're going to really have to limit it. But I think if you get to
saying per request? Or overall, like cumulative throughout the year?
No, I think like if you said that, if you wanted an art today, say you wanted an art sheet, something that was, you know, I want 4 months worth of X. Well, that documentation might be substantial enough that, you know, so like, or even if you do one request, you still got to take it out.
Perfect. I like the per request idea.
For right to know, do we have to provide a hard copy or can we offer them a digital copy?
So I know that there's typically a USB that's, usually requested, like you can bring in a USB versus printing out. But I don't know, Melissa, do you mind, is there anything you'd add to what Carl's question?
I think you clarified Carl's question that we would either offer an option of like a paper copy or a USB, and we could charge them the amount of the USB, or they could bring in their own flash drive.
Okay. Yeah.
Do we offer to email it to them at all?
No, typically I have not seen that. They
Okay.
have to come into the office to pick up their materials.
Okay. All right. So, I mean, my recommendation is it is a policy, so we have 2 new board members that are on the policy committee. So maybe this is the first one with the rest of the policy committee to look at that review. I do like Jason's comment, look at what other districts do, but in the end, that's an informative to the policy committee, not a directive to follow what those do, what those towns do. So, I don't know. Anybody else? Thoughts?
And even if it's something from, your past, your administration's past, other districts that you guys have worked in where they might have a similar policy or something in place, just something to compare to.
We'll take a look at our policy.
Yep. All right. All right, so that's the right to know policy fee. Last one that I have is discussion about the last day of school. So this is something that Mr. Thompson has brought up and we've talked about before. So Ms. Thompson was looking to see if recommendations to the board.
Yeah, so right now, the last day of school is scheduled for Friday, June 24th. That would be a half day of school. And that's based upon, the number of snow days we've had. That represents 180 student instructional days. And again, this often comes up when we have the calendar discussion. The state requires us to have 990 instructional hours. Now, again, that's a minimum standard. Typically, we achieve that minimum standard sometime in May. So there is an allowance for us to be able, for the board to be able to modify the last day of school. Our collective bargaining agreements would indicate we'd have to have 180 school days. I've talked with both of the associations that this would impact, the support staff and the professional staff. They are receptive to modifying that to 179 days. If the board were to accept this recommendation as it is coming, I would use that day as a professional development day for our teachers. Specifically, our support staff, again, not having PD time for our support staff is an issue. I would there's some mandatory trainings that support staff have not had the opportunity to participate in. We would conduct those on that day. We would also use that time for professional staff to be able to have some of those vertical conversations, to be able to chat with their grade level that they're sending their students to, and any other trainings that we had. And at this point, with the approval of the strategic plan, that's a good opportunity to get staff input as we begin to create the goals for the following school year. So it's definitely time that we would use productively. So I would make a recommendation to the board that we modify this year's calendar so that the last day of school would be Thursday, June 23rd, and that would be a half day of school.
What do you mean by half day? What do you mean half day?
Good. All right, so board members, any questions, comments to Mr. Thompson about that?
I don't know how to word it. As a parent of an 8th grader, Pinkerton has a bunch of summertime camps and extracurricular camps for the incoming students. Some of those camps start on June 21st. And our our students can't participate in it at this point in time because of our end date. Even moving it to the 23rd, unfortunately, these students wouldn't be able to do this, and it's a one-time only opportunity. Is there any leeway to move that a little bit closer, a little bit, pull that end date up a little bit further so maybe some of these students can participate in that? I know I'm talking maybe 5-10 students, but for those 5-10 students, this would mean the world.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I think that that would lend itself to further conversation that I would want to have with my administrative team and with the associations. So I think right now, I don't know that I can make that commitment. The other piece that I would say is I know when we talk about a school district of 850 students, we're talking about 5 to 10 kids. I would personally really try to find a way to make it work for those 5 to 10 kids within the context of not modifying the calendar. So perhaps knowing that those last few days of school, we're really kind of wrapping things up. Maybe we could make an allowance for those students to attend without having to change the master calendar.
I like it.
Yeah.
Any questions, comments? Good. So I think we'll be looking for a vote. So we're looking for a motion to accept Ms. Thompson's recommendation of ending one day earlier for a Thursday, June 23rd half day, be the last day of school for 2022.
Second it.
And any discussions? All approved, please raise your hand. All right, unanimous. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you.
And I assume communication forthcoming if it's not already sent.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely. I know people are excited about that. And I think we should just be excited by the fact that we missed no days of school because of COVID this year. We were in, and that, not yet, knock on wood. But no, I do think that, and even being able to move to remote snow days, having the one remote snow day, I think, we got in our instructional time.
Yep.
There's never enough time, but I think this is the right thing to do.
Okay, thank you. All right, so at this point, that concludes other business, old business, unless anybody else has anything. All right, at this time, I'm going to be looking for a motion to go into non-public under RSA 91A3 2I.
So moved.
All right, looking for a second.
Second.
Second by Megan. Melissa, would you mind taking the roll call?
Mr. Giard?
Yes.
Dr. Hebner?
Yes.
Ms. Malcolm?
Yes.
Mrs. Pellegrini? And Mr. Smith?
Yes.
I think that's everyone. Motion carries. It's 9:19.
Yep. And Ms. Thompson, I believe we do not intend to make a vote tonight in non-public, so we would not be coming back on live for those that are at home.